Hi, my name is Emma Carter. I'm 22 years old and I live in Austin, Texas. I'm a university student studying business administration. But there's something about me that might surprise you. I've struggled with English, even though I've been learning it for years. And not just speaking English, but thinking in English. You might wonder, Emma, aren't you in the U.S.? Don't you speak English every day? Yes, I do. But speaking English and thinking in English are two very different things. Let me tell you my story. I grew up in a bilingual household. My parents are originally from Mexico, so Spanish was the first language I learned at home. We spoke mostly Spanish, and even though I learned English in school, I always translated everything in my head before I spoke. If someone asked me, "How was your weekend?" my brain would first think in Spanish. Then I would translate it into English and say, "My weekend was good." It might seem like a small thing, but this habit made my English slow. Conversations felt exhausting. I always needed a few extra seconds to respond, and sometimes by the time I was ready to say something, the topic had already changed. I realized that this habit was holding me back. If I wanted to speak fluently, I had to stop thinking in Spanish. I had to start thinking in English. The first realization. The first time I noticed this problem was in my college classes. My professor would ask a question, and my classmates would answer quickly. I, on the other hand, would sit there translating in my head. I understood the question, but by the time I was ready to answer, someone else had already spoken. One day, my professor asked me a direct question in class. I panicked. I knew the answer, but my brain was busy translating. I could feel the eyes of my classmates on me. After a long pause, I finally answered. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't natural either. After class, my friend Mia noticed my frustration. "Emma, you know English. What's stopping you?" she asked. "I always think in Spanish first," I admitted. She laughed. "That's your problem. You need to stop translating and start thinking in English. English exclamation mark." She was right. But how? Step 1. Surrounding myself with English. The first thing I did was change my environment. Even though I lived in the U.S., I realized I was still living in Spanish. My phone was in Spanish. My Netflix shows, mostly in Spanish. Even my grocery lists were in Spanish. So I made a decision. I would switch everything to English. I changed my phone settings. I started watching shows in English without subtitles. I listened to English podcasts. I even set reminders in English on my phone. It felt strange at first, but my brain slowly started adjusting. Step 2. Speaking to myself in English. One day I was walking home from class, and I decided to talk to myself in English. Not out loud. I didn't want people to think I was crazy, but in my head. I started narrating my day. Instead of thinking, I forced myself to think, "I'm going to do my homework when I get home." At first, I had to concentrate, but after a few days, it became easier. My brain started processing things in English naturally. Step 3. Thinking in simple sentences. Another problem I faced was that my Spanish thoughts were too complicated. I would try to translate them word for word, and it didn't always make sense in English. So I started using simple English in my thoughts. For example, instead of thinking, ¿Qué pasa si llueve más tarde? I would think, I hope it doesn't rain later because I need to go to the store. Short. Simple. Director. Step 4. Describing what I see. One of the best exercises I did was describing things around me in English. When I was at a coffee shop, I would look around and think, the barista is making coffee. That man is reading a book. This coffee smells good. At first it was slow, but over time, my brain started doing it automatically. Step 5. Talking without worrying about mistakes. One of the biggest things that slowed me down was my fear of making mistakes. Every time I spoke, I worried about my grammar, but then I remembered something my English professor told me. Native speakers make mistakes too. She was right. I had heard my American friends say things like, me and my friend went to the store, which isn't grammatically correct, but people still say it. I realized that fluency is more important than perfection, so I started speaking without overthinking. If I made a mistake, I kept going. And something amazing happened. I became more confident. The turning point. A few months later, I had a big moment. I was in a group discussion in one of my classes. The professor asked a question, and before I even realized it, I answered, without translating in my head. It was natural. It was automatic. The journey never stops. After that moment in class, I felt a new level of confidence. But the journey to thinking in English didn't stop there. I had to keep practicing, keep pushing myself, and keep challenging my mind. One of the biggest tests came when I had to give a presentation in front of my entire class. Public speaking is scary for most people, but for me, it was even harder. My brain was still adjusting, and I was afraid that under pressure I might go back to translating in my head. So I prepared differently this time. Instead of writing my speech in Spanish and then translating it, I forced myself to write everything directly in English. I practiced out loud. I recorded myself speaking and listened back. On the day of the presentation, I was nervous, but something incredible happened. When I stood in front of the class, I started speaking without thinking about Spanish at all. The words just came naturally. I wasn't just speaking English, I was thinking in English, without fear, without hesitation. That moment made me realize that learning a language is not just about words and grammar. It's about changing the way you think, overcoming challenges. Of course, there were still challenges. Sometimes when I was tired, my brain wanted to go back to Spanish, and there were moments when I still felt stuck on certain words. But instead of getting frustrated, I reminded myself, this is normal. I started keeping a small notebook where I wrote down words or phrases that I struggled with. Every night before bed, I would review them. Little by little, those words became part of my natural thoughts. Another challenge was speaking with native speakers who talked too fast. At first, I felt overwhelmed, but I developed a strategy. Instead of trying to understand every single word, I focused on the context. For example, if someone said, "Hey, want to grab a bite?" I didn't stop to think, what does grab a bite mean exactly? Instead, I understood from the situation that they were inviting me to eat. This mindset helped me stop overanalyzing and just go with the flow. the moment I knew I had changed. A few months after my journey started, something funny happened. I was walking through campus, texting my friend, when I suddenly realized I had written the whole message in English without even thinking about Spanish. I stopped for a second. I wasn't translating. I wasn't hesitating. My brain had fully switched to English. That was the moment I knew I had finally trained my mind to think in English. Thinking in English isn't about being perfect. It's about making English a natural part of your life. If you're struggling right now, don't worry. It takes time, but it's possible. Just remember, stop translating in your head, surround yourself with English every day, talk to yourself in English, use simple sentences, and grow from there. Accept that mistakes are part of learning. If you keep practicing, one day you'll realize that your brain has made the switch, just like mine did. The power of patience and persistence. After I realized my brain had started thinking in English, I felt proud. But I also knew that this was just the beginning. Learning a language is not something you do once and then stop. It's a continuous journey. Even after making so much progress, I still had moments when my mind would switch back to Spanish, especially when I was tired or stressed. At first, I was frustrated. Why am I still thinking in Spanish sometimes? But then I reminded myself this is normal. Our brains are naturally wired to go back to the language we are most comfortable with. That's why I had to be consistent. So I created a daily routine to make sure I didn't lose my progress. My daily routine to keep thinking in English every day, I made sure to practice in small but effective ways. Morning routine in English. As soon as I woke up, I narrated my morning in English. I need to brush my teeth. I'll make some coffee. I have a class at 10 a.m. This set my brain in English mode for the day, writing my thoughts before bed. I would write a short journal entry in English about my day. It didn't have to be perfect, but it helped me process my thoughts in English before sleeping. Speaking English even when alone. Whenever I was alone, I practiced speaking out loud. If I was driving, I would talk about what I saw on the road. If I was cooking, I would say, "Now I'm cutting the onions. This smells amazing." English-only conversations. I told my friends and classmates that I wanted to practice more, so even when I was with my Spanish-speaking friends, we challenged each other to speak only in English for at least 30 minutes, using English to solve problems. If I was thinking about something stressful, like an assignment or an important decision, I forced myself to think through the problem in English. It helped me train my brain to handle even complex thoughts in English. These small steps made a huge difference. The first dream in English. One of the craziest moments in my journey was the first time I dreamed in English. I remember waking up feeling shocked. My entire dream had been in English. I had spoken in English, and even the people in my dream were speaking in English. That's when I knew my brain had truly adapted. It didn't mean that I would never think in Spanish again, but it showed me that my efforts were working, helping others who struggle with the same problem. After going through this journey, I started noticing that many people around me were struggling with the same thing, especially international students at my university. One day, I met a girl named Sophia who had recently moved from Colombia. She was fluent in English, but she told me she still thought in Spanish all the time. I smiled and said, "I used to be exactly like you." I shared my story with her, and she was shocked. "But you sound so natural in English," she said. "Because I trained my brain," I told her. "You can do it too." She started following my daily routine, and after a few months, she told me, "Emma, I just realized I was thinking in English without even trying. That made me so happy, because I knew how powerful this skill was. A deeper transformation." Over time, my daily routine of thinking in English evolved into something more profound, an integral part of who I was becoming. I began to notice that the language wasn't just a tool for conversation, it was reshaping my perspective on life. One brisk autumn morning, I found myself preparing for a group project meeting in one of my business classes. The room buzzed with excitement and ideas, and I felt ready to contribute in a way I hadn't before. During the brainstorming session, when others hesitated or fumbled for words, my thoughts flowed naturally in English. I blurted out, "What if we use digital storytelling to connect with our audience on a more personal level?" The suggestion wasn't rehearsed or meticulously translated. It was pure, spontaneous creativity. The group fell silent for a moment before erupting into discussion. In that instant, I realized that my inner voice, once burdened by constant translation, had become a powerful asset. Soon after that pivotal meeting, an opportunity presented itself that would further test and refine my newfound fluency. I secured an internship at a thriving startup in Austin, a company known for its innovative approach and fast-paced environment. Walking into the office on my first day, I was both excited and nervous. I knew that in the world of business, precision and quick thinking were essential, and I was determined to meet those expectations. The internship was a whirlwind of meetings, project deadlines, and impromptu brainstorming sessions. At one team meeting, while discussing strategies to revamp our marketing campaign, I encountered an unfamiliar business idiom. Instead of freezing up or mentally reverting to Spanish, I made a quiet promise to myself. I would ask for clarification later and learn from it. That evening, after a long day of absorbing new information, I sat at my desk researching the idiom. With each new term I learned, my confidence grew. I began to see that every challenge was an opportunity to enrich my vocabulary and deepen my understanding of the language. Beyond the office, my campus life proto-practice. I joined the English Language Club, where students from all over the world gathered to discuss literature, debate current events, and share their experiences learning English. These meetings became a highlight of my week. In the relaxed atmosphere of the club, I found that I could experiment with idiomatic expressions, ask questions without fear, and even laugh at my own mistakes. One evening, after a passionate debate about American literature, I sat on the campus lawn beneath a canopy of stars. I reflected on the years when I struggled to string together even a simple sentence. Now, not only was I fluent, but I was also able to articulate my opinions and feelings with ease. It was a moment of quiet triumph, a reminder that every small step along the way had led me to this place of confidence and clarity. I also began to appreciate that thinking in English didn't mean abandoning my roots. Even as my mind increasingly operated in English, the rich tapestry of my cultural heritage remained with me. I still dreamed in Spanish sometimes, and on quiet days, I would catch myself switching effortlessly between the two languages. This duality wasn't a weakness. Rather, it was a strength that allowed me to see the world through multiple perspectives. I realized that being bilingual gave me a unique ability to connect with people from diverse backgrounds, and that versatility was something to be celebrated. At the office, during yet another busy week, I was tasked with leading a small project team. We had to develop a proposal for a new client, and I was responsible for organizing our ideas and ensuring that every team member felt heard. In that role, I found that my internal dialogue in English helped me structure my thoughts clearly and assertively. I started jotting down ideas on a whiteboard, explaining each point with clarity. When the client visited for a preliminary meeting, I confidently presented our proposal. The presentation flowed naturally, and I answered questions with a newfound ease that impressed not only my colleagues, but also the client. That day, I realized that thinking in English had become a cornerstone of my professional identity. Even as my confidence soared, there were moments when the old habits crept in. Late at night, while studying for an exam or working on a challenging project, I sometimes found myself drifting into familiar Spanish expressions. In those instances, I'd pause and gently steer my thoughts back, reminding myself of all the progress I had made. I kept a small notebook in my backpack where I jotted down new phrases or expressions that I encountered during the day. Each note was a small victory, a tangible record of my ongoing journey. Reviewing those notes became a nightly ritual that reinforced my commitment to learning and adapting. Reflecting on my journey, I began to see that the transformation wasn't solely about mastering a language. It was about evolving as a person. The process taught me patience, resilience, and the courage to step out of my comfort zone. Every conversation, every meeting, every moment of self-doubt overcome contributed to the mosaic of my personal growth. I learned that it wasn't about erasing my past, but about weaving it into a broader narrative that embraced both my heritage and my aspirations. Now, as I move forward in both my academic and professional life, I carry with me the confidence of a mind that has learned to think in English, a confidence that opens doors, fosters creativity, and builds bridges between cultures. I look back on my early struggles with gratitude because they set me on a path to discover the limitless possibilities of language and self-expression. In the quiet moments, when I find myself reflecting on the path I've traveled, I smile at the thought of all those little breakthroughs, each one a testament to perseverance and the transformative power of language. I know that there will always be new challenges ahead, new expressions to master, and new cultural nuances to understand. But now I embrace them with open arms, confident that my inner dialogue will continue to evolve, carrying me toward even greater horizons. My journey of thinking in English is a living story, one that continues with every new experience, every conversation, and every dream. And as I forge ahead, I hope that my story inspires others to take that first brave step, to allow their thoughts to break free and to discover the profound freedom that comes with truly thinking in a new language. One evening, as I walked home from my internship, I thought about how far I had come. The streets of Austin were alive with the hum of conversations, the scent of food trucks filling the air, and the distant sound of live music echoing from a nearby bar. It was a perfect representation of my own journey, vibrant, constantly changing, and full of new experiences. I stopped by a small cafe near my apartment to grab a coffee. While waiting in line, I overheard a group of international students struggling to order in English. Their words were hesitant, their accents thick with uncertainty. I saw a younger version of myself in them, nervous, afraid of making mistakes. Without thinking, I stepped forward and smiled at them. "Hey, are you guys new here?" I asked gently. They looked at me, surprised but relieved that someone was speaking to them in a way that felt welcoming. One of the students, a girl with dark curly hair, nodded. "Yes, we just arrived last week. English is hard," she admitted with a small laugh. I smiled, understanding her completely. "I know exactly how you feel. I used to be just like you." Their eyes widened. "But you sound so natural," another student, a boy from Korea, said. "Trust me, it wasn't always this way," I assured them. "I struggled a lot, but I found ways to train my brain to think in English. And once I did that, everything became easier." They were curious. And as we waited for our drinks, I shared some of my experiences. I told them about my routine, how I narrated my day in English, how I challenged myself to think in English even when no one was around. They listened eagerly, nodding at each tip I gave them. When our drinks were ready, the girl, her name was Anna, hesitated before saying, "Thank you for talking to us. It helps to know that someone else has been through this." I smiled warmly. "You're not alone. It just takes time. But one day, you'll realize you're thinking in English without even trying." As I walked back to my apartment, I felt something deep inside me, something I hadn't fully recognized before. I had become the person I once wished for, the friend, the guide, the proof that it is possible to change the way you think. The unexpected test. A few months later, I was invited to a networking event for young professionals in Austin. It was an exciting opportunity to meet people in my field, but it was also a test of how far I had come. In the past, events like these would have terrified me. The thought of making small talk, introducing myself, and sounding confident in English would have made me anxious. But this time I walked into the event with my head held high. I introduced myself to different people, joined conversations effortlessly, and even cracked a joke or two. At one point, I met a senior manager from a well-known marketing firm. We talked about trends in digital media, and before I knew it, I was explaining my ideas with passion and confidence. He listened intently and then said, "Emma, you have great insight. Have you ever thought about applying for a position at our company?" For a moment, I was speechless. Was this really happening? I smiled and said, "I would love to." That night, as I walked home, I felt something powerful. Thinking in English wasn't just about language anymore. It had become a part of who I was. It had given me confidence, opportunities, and a way to connect with people I never would have met otherwise. In the months that followed, my world began to transform in ways I had never imagined. Every day became a blend of new challenges and small victories, each one a testament to how far I had come. I remember one evening after a long day juggling classes, my internship, and community volunteering. I found myself sitting alone in the campus garden. The dusk painted the sky with hues of purple and orange as I watched a group of students laugh and share stories. In that quiet moment, I realized something. Thinking in English wasn't just about fluency. It had become a bridge to connect with people, with ideas, and with a world that was constantly evolving around me. That realization hit me even harder at a local cultural fair in Austin. The fair was a vibrant celebration of our diverse community, where food, music, and art from all corners of the globe came together. I was asked to assist at a booth that promoted bilingual education, a cause close to my heart. There, I worked alongside Carlos, a passionate educator from El Paso, and Jennifer, a dynamic community organizer who had dedicated her life to empowering immigrant families. Together, we engaged visitors in conversation, answered questions, and shared stories about our experiences with language and identity. One conversation in particular stood out. A nervous young man named Daniel, who had recently moved from Honduras, approached our booth. His eyes were filled with a mix of hope and anxiety as he explained in broken English that he wanted to improve his language skills to secure a better job. I recognized that familiar feeling of uncertainty from my own early days. I knelt beside him and said, "Daniel, every new word you learn is a step forward." I remember the fear I felt when I first tried to think in English, but every mistake made me stronger. His smile that day, shy yet determined, reminded me that every challenge was a chance to grow, and that I, too, was growing with every passing moment. At the same time, my academic life was taking on new dimensions. In class discussions, I no longer hesitated or second-guessed my words. Instead, I contributed with clarity and conviction, often finding that my ability to think quickly in English gave me a unique perspective on complex problems. My professors noticed the difference, too. Professor Jacobs, who had long been my mentor, once told me, "Emma, your journey has taught you that language is more than grammar or vocabulary. It's about expressing your truth." His words resonated deeply with me, reinforcing the idea that my bilingualism was not a hindrance, but a powerful tool, one that enriched every facet of my life. Balancing these new responsibilities was not always easy. There were nights when the weight of expectations, academic deadlines, work projects, and community commitments felt overwhelming. I often found solace in my journal, a quiet sanctuary where I could reflect on both my triumphs and my struggles. In the pages of that journal, I wrote about moments of doubt, when my thoughts slipped back into Spanish, and about the fierce determination it took to steer myself back into English. Over time, I began to see these instances not as setbacks, but as natural parts of my learning process. They were reminders that growth often comes with moments of vulnerability. One crisp winter evening, as the campus lay under a blanket of soft snow, I attended a special event at the community center where I volunteered. The event was designed for new immigrants to practice English in a friendly, low-pressure environment. Among the attendees was Lucia, a bright and spirited woman from Peru who struggled with confidence in her spoken English, despite her wealth of ideas. I shared my own story with her, the countless hours of self-talk, the fear of mispronunciation, and the eventual breakthrough that came when I finally embraced imperfection. Lucia's eyes lit up with a mix of relief and newfound determination. "Maybe," she said softly, "I can finally stop worrying so much and just speak." That simple exchange reminded me of a truth I had learned over and over again. The power of language lies not in flawless delivery, but in the courage to express oneself authentically. A voice worth sharing. As spring approached, life continued to offer both challenges and unexpected opportunities. A few weeks after the fair, I received an invitation to speak at a local panel discussion on bilingual education and cultural identity. The thought of addressing an audience of educators, students, and community leaders both excited and terrified me. I spent countless hours preparing, not only refining my speech in English, but making sure that my words resonated with the heart of my experience. On the day of the panel, as I stood before the crowd, I felt a rush of adrenaline mixed with calm confidence. I spoke about my journey, from a hesitant translator in my own mind to someone who now lived and breathed English every day. I talked about the struggles, the late nights of self-doubt, and the eventual realization that language is not a wall. It's a living, evolving part of who we are. The applause that followed wasn't just for the words I had spoken. It was for the journey I represented, a journey of persistence, of self-discovery, of the transformative power of embracing a new way of thinking. After the event, I took a long walk along the tree-lined streets of my neighborhood. The cool breeze whispered promises of change and growth. I thought about my parents, who had always spoken to me in Spanish, and how their love and support had laid the foundation for my success. I felt a deep sense of gratitude for both sides of my identity, for the comfort of my native language and the bold adventure of thinking in English. In that balance, I had found a strength that allowed me to navigate the complexities of life with greater ease. Every experience, every conversation, every moment of self-doubt had converged to create a mosaic of resilience and transformation. I knew there would always be days when my thoughts slipped back into Spanish, days when the familiar rhythm of my native tongue would resurface. But I also understood that each of those moments was an integral part of my journey, a reminder of where I had come from and how far I had traveled, a life reimagined. Today, as I continue to walk this path, I embrace every aspect of my bilingual identity. I no longer see thinking in English as a final goal to be reached, but as an ever-evolving process, one that enriches my perspective and connects me to a world of infinite possibilities. With every conversation, every new word learned, and every moment of shared understanding, I celebrate the unique blend of languages that shapes who I am. And so, my story goes on. A journey of learning, of growing, and of daring to express the deepest parts of my soul in a language that once seemed so distant. It is a story that reminds me, and perhaps others, that true progress is not measured by the absence of mistakes, but by the willingness to keep moving forward, to keep embracing the beauty of expression, to keep believing in the transformative power of language. In the following months, life unfolded in unexpected ways that deepened my connection with English, and more importantly, with myself. Every morning, as I sipped my coffee on the small balcony of my apartment in Austin, I would reflect on the new challenges the day might bring. I was no longer just a student navigating college classes or juggling an internship. My world had expanded to include mentoring, public speaking, and even creative projects that merged my personal experiences with my passion for language. One voice, two worlds. One crisp April morning, I received an invitation to attend a regional conference on bilingual education and cultural identity in New York City. The invitation came from Karen Smith, a respected professor of linguistics whom I had met during one of my university workshops. She had told me she was compiling stories about language learning for an upcoming publication, and that my journey was one of the most inspiring examples she had encountered. The thought of sharing my story with a larger audience filled me with both excitement and nervous anticipation. When the day of the conference arrived, I found myself stepping into a grand auditorium buzzing with the energy of educators, students, and professionals from across the country. The diversity in the room was palpable. People from every corner of the United States, all united by their passion for languages and cultural exchange. As I took my seat, I noticed a mix of familiar and new faces. There was Mia, an old friend from college who had also embraced her bilingual roots, and several others whose eyes sparkled with the same determination that had once defined my own struggle. The voice within. During one panel session, I was invited to speak about my experience transitioning from a mind that constantly translated to one that thought directly in English. I took a deep breath and stepped up to the microphone. In that moment, I realized that all the late-night journal entries, the countless hours of self-talk, and the quiet moments of doubt had led me here, to this stage. I spoke honestly about how I had once hesitated in class, believing every word I said had to be perfect. Over time, I learned to let go of that fear. I shared practical tips that helped me, narrating my day in English, jotting down unfamiliar phrases, and embracing small daily victories. The response was overwhelming. After my talk, a young woman named Elena approached me. Her eyes were filled with quiet emotion as she whispered, "Hearing your story has given me hope. I've always felt trapped in my translations, but now I see that I can break free too." That conversation marked a turning point for me. It reminded me that my journey wasn't just about mastering a language, it was about empowerment, about connection, about unlocking voices long held back by fear, ripples of change. The next few weeks in New York unfolded like a dream. I met with educators, fellow students, and professionals eager to explore new ways of teaching and learning language. I spent long afternoons in quiet coffee shops, exchanging ideas with people like Daniel, a tech entrepreneur who had struggled with language barriers in his own career, and Sophia, a community organizer from Boston passionate about cultural inclusion. When I returned to Austin, the lessons from New York rippled through every aspect of my life. Inspired and energized, I launched a small workshop series at my university called Thinking in English. The sessions were intimate, held in a bright classroom lined with inspirational posters and a whiteboard filled with hopeful scribbles. I invited students from diverse backgrounds: Anna, who had always hesitated to speak up in class; Ahmed, whose quiet brilliance shone through his written essays; and even Lucia, who had once doubted her ability to express herself in English. Together, we created a space to speak without fear. We shared our challenges, practiced reflection, and celebrated every small breakthrough. One afternoon, I introduced a simple but powerful exercise. I asked everyone to describe an object in the room, in as much detail as possible, entirely in English. It could be the old wooden desk or the potted plant in the corner. As each person took their turn, I watched their confidence bloom. The exercise wasn't just about vocabulary or grammar. It was about trusting their inner voice. When Anna described the desk with a mix of humor and poetic insight, the room burst into applause. That moment, like so many others, reminded me: the real transformation begins when we give ourselves permission to speak, not perfectly, but authentically. Rain and reflection. Amid these professional and community endeavors, life continued to offer moments of quiet personal growth. I still found time to nurture my creative side, often picking up a pen in the quiet hours of the night to write short stories and reflections. In one such story, I recalled a rainy afternoon in Austin. I had sat by the window, the soft patter of rain mirroring the rhythm of my thoughts. In that solitude, I had a revelation. English had become the language of my aspirations and public life. But Spanish remained the language of my heart. It was the voice of my childhood, my family, my first lullabies and lessons. It was where I returned when I needed comfort, understanding, or warmth. This duality wasn't a conflict. It was a harmony, a beautifully intricate blend that deepened my perspective and enriched my soul. a street fair, and a bilingual soul. One evening, as I strolled through a lively downtown street fair in Austin, surrounded by colorful lights and the hum of laughter and conversation, I felt that harmony more clearly than ever. Musicians played beneath strings of lanterns. The scent of street food mingled with the sounds of two languages, Spanish and English, dancing effortlessly in the air. I heard mothers switching between tongues, children playing in Spanglish, vendors greeting customers in both languages with ease. And I smiled, because I was home. Not just in a city, but in myself. In this space where cultures met and lived together in peace, where every word in any language carried the same power, the power to connect, a shared journey. I encountered a familiar scene. A group of new international students hesitating at a food stall, unsure how to order. I couldn't help but smile, remembering my own early struggles. Approaching gently, I struck up a conversation in English, offering to help. Their faces lit up with relief, and soon we were laughing and exchanging stories about our first days in the United States. One of them, a bright-eyed student named Javier from Argentina, confided, "Hearing you speak so confidently makes me believe I can overcome my fears too." In that moment, I truly understood. This journey was never just about me. It was a shared experience, a ripple effect, a spark that could ignite courage in someone else, vision for the future. As summer approached, I found myself reflecting on the winding road that had brought me here. Every challenge, every stumble, every breakthrough had taught me something invaluable. I remembered the sleepless nights spent correcting my internal translations, the anxiety before class discussions, and the quiet triumph of finally dreaming in English. More than just acquiring a language, I had discovered a way to express my authentic self, unburdened by the need to constantly convert my thoughts. With that clarity, a new vision began to take shape. I started researching programs that supported immigrant youth in integrating into American society through language and storytelling. I dreamed of establishing a community center, a safe haven where students could come together, share their narratives, learn from one another, and celebrate the vibrant threads of culture that wove the fabric of our nation. My journey of thinking in English was evolving into a mission, a commitment to help others find their voices no matter what language they spoke. Words that carry us. One crisp fall evening, walking along the tree-lined streets of Austin, I paused at a small park bench. The gentle rustle of leaves underfoot mirrored the quiet turning of seasons within me. I took out my journal and, with slow, deliberate strokes, began to write. Not just as a record of my progress, but as a beacon. For someone, someday, who might be walking a similar path. I wrote about the power of perseverance, the beauty of cultural duality, the limitless potential that blooms when we embrace a new way of thinking. In that quiet moment, I felt deeply connected to every person who has ever struggled to express themselves, regardless of the language. Endless possibilities. Today, my journey continues, With every new day, every conversation, and every story shared, I keep moving forward. Yes, I still face moments of self-doubt when the old habits of translation creep in during times of stress. But now I see them for what they are. Not setbacks, but reminders of how far I've come and stepping stones toward where I'm going. Looking back, I understand now. Learning to think in English was not merely a linguistic achievement. It was a journey of self-discovery, resilience, and connection. Language is not just a set of words. It's a living, breathing expression of identity. And as I continue to navigate life as a bilingual woman in the United States, I carry this certainty with me. Every challenge is an opportunity. Every conversation is a bridge. Every word is a step toward a more inclusive, empowered future. Tips to help you start thinking in English. Here's a practical and powerful list of strategies you can use starting today. Each technique is designed to help you make English your natural way of thinking, not just speaking. Immerse yourself in an English environment. What it means: surround yourself with English as much as possible in every part of your daily life. How to do it. Change device settings. Set your phone, computer, and apps to English. Consume English media. Watch TV shows, movies, and YouTube in English. Listen actively. Try English podcasts or audiobooks during walks or chores. Follow English content. Subscribe to English-speaking influencers, news outlets, or interest groups. Why it works. Your brain adapts to frequent input. With enough exposure, English becomes your brain's default processing language, reducing the need to translate. Practice self-talk and internal narration. What it means. Train your mind to describe your thoughts and actions in English, even when you're alone. How to do it. Narrate your day. As you go through your routine, think in English. Example, I'm cooking rice now, or I need to call my friend. Speak aloud. When possible, say things out loud to reinforce pronunciation and fluency. Why it works. You're building a direct connection between your thoughts and the English language. The more you do it, the more natural it feels. 3. Keep an English journal. What it means. Write in English every day to practice forming sentences, expressing ideas, and expanding your vocabulary. How to do it. Daily entries. Write about your day, thoughts, or lessons learned. Reflect on growth. Reread old entries to see how far you've come. Why it works. Journaling helps you process your thoughts in English and notice patterns in how you express yourself. Would you like me to continue this list with more tips like shadowing describing surroundings, using a personal phrase book, reading aloud, building mini monologues, or designing your English thinking zone? How to start thinking in English. A practical and motivational guide for English learners. Introduction. A new way of thinking. Learning English isn't just about grammar rules or vocabulary lists. It's about transforming the way your brain processes thoughts. When you start thinking in English, you stop translating and start expressing. You gain fluency, confidence, and the ability to communicate with authenticity. This guide blends real-world strategies with a motivational message. You can do this. Step by step, day by day. Let's dive into the tools that will help rewire your mind and reshape your journey. 1. Keep an English journal. What it means. Writing daily in English forces you to structure your thoughts directly, without translation. How to do it? Dedicate 5 to 10 minutes a day to write about your thoughts, your day, or what you learned. Don't worry about perfection. Just focus on flow. Revisit old entries monthly to track your growth. Why it works. Journaling boosts your sentence-building confidence and helps solidify new vocabulary and expressions. 2. Read extensively in English. What it means. Reading regularly immerses you in grammar, structure, and native vocabulary. How to do it. Mix fiction, nonfiction, news, blogs, and articles. Highlight new words, note them down, and try to use them in speech or writing. Why it works. Reading shapes your internal monologue and builds a natural rhythm of English thinking. 3. Engage in active listening. What it means. Focus on how English is used in real-life contexts. How to do it. Watch videos, listen to podcasts, or audiobooks. Use the shadowing technique. Repeat after the speaker, mimicking intonation and pace. Pause and repeat short segments word for word. Why it works. It sharpens your ear and allows your brain to absorb natural sentence patterns. 4. Avoid over-translating. What it means. Stop converting your native language thoughts into English. Think directly in English. How to do it. Start with simple thoughts. I'm hungry. It's raining. I like this music. Set challenges. Think only in English for 15 minutes, then increase time gradually. Why it works. Reduces hesitation and rewires your brain for direct English processing. 5. Practice self-talk and narration. What it means. Speak or think in English during your daily routine. How to do it. Narrate your actions. I'm making tea now. Try speaking aloud when alone. It helps with fluency and confidence. Why it works. This builds a direct bridge between thoughts and language, bypassing translation. 6. Interact with native speakers. What it means. Engage in real conversations to activate spontaneous thinking. How to do it. Join language exchange programs or online meetups. Participate in discussions, clubs, or community events. Why it works. Conversations demand quick thinking, which speeds up mental fluency. 7. Use technology and language apps. What it means. Leverage digital tools to reinforce speaking, vocabulary, and pronunciation. How to do it. Use apps like Duolingo, Memrise, Elsa Speak, or Youglish. Record yourself speaking, then listen to spot errors and track improvement. Why it works. Apps offer instant feedback and structured progress, boosting confidence. 8. Create visual reminders. What it means. Reinforce learning through constant passive exposure. How to do it. Place sticky notes on objects around your home with their English names. Create visual mind maps or sketch out your routine in English. Why it works. Visual connections help you recall words faster without needing to translate. 9. Join groups and English workshops. What it means. Find or build a community that supports English learning. How to do it. Join online clubs, local English conversation groups, or creative writing workshops. Attend seminars or webinars focused on speaking skills. Why it works. Learning becomes social, enjoyable, and emotionally supportive. 10. Accept mistakes as a natural part of the process. What it means. Let go of perfectionism and embrace learning from your errors. How to do it. Note your mistakes, then learn the correct version. Celebrate small wins, a fluent sentence, a compliment, a moment of clarity. Why it works. Confidence grows when you treat mistakes as stepping stones, not setbacks. 11. Be patient and persistent. What it means. Fluency takes time. Consistency is your best friend. How to do it. Set achievable goals like 5-minute conversations or daily listening. Track your growth in a log. Notice what was once difficult is now easy. Why it works. Language learning isn't linear. Progress happens when you don't give up. 12. Use advanced visualization and mental simulation. What it means. Think creatively. Visualize yourself using English in different life scenarios. How to do it. Imagine yourself ordering food, giving a speech, or having a deep conversation. Create English daydreams. What would I say if I met a celebrity? How would I explain my dream job? Why it works. Mental rehearsal prepares your brain to respond in real situations, naturally and fluently. Final words. Thinking in English is a journey. Thinking in English isn't just about fluency. It's about gaining confidence, building a new identity, connecting across cultures, and unlocking your potential. By embracing these strategies, you're doing more than learning a language. You're creating a new version of yourself. One conversation, one sentence, one thought at a time. How to do it. Scenario building before sleeping or during quiet moments. Choose a setting like a cafe, a job interview, or a travel destination, and imagine yourself there. Picture the people, sounds, and sights in as much detail as possible, and internally have conversations in English. Emote and detail. Incorporate your feelings and sensory details. For example, think, I feel excited as I enter the busy coffee shop. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee surrounds me, and I greet the barista with a friendly, "Good morning." Why it works. This method not only strengthens your vocabulary, but also helps your brain practice English in complex, realistic contexts, making the language more instinctive and emotionally resonant. 2. Mind mapping in English. What it means. A mind map is a visual representation of ideas and their connections. Creating mind maps in English forces you to link concepts and vocabulary in a creative and non-linear way. How to do it. Central idea. Start with a central theme like my day, emotions, or dreams. Branch out. Create branches that represent different aspects of that idea. For instance, for my day, branch out to morning, afternoon, evening, then add sub-branches with activities and thoughts. Visual cues. Use colors and symbols to further connect ideas. Write everything in English and review your map to reinforce vocabulary and natural phrasing. Why it works. Mind mapping engages both your creative and analytical sides, building neural connections that make thinking in English more fluid and less reliant on linear translation from your native language. 3. Role-playing and simulation exercises. What it means, role-playing isn't just for language classes. It's a dynamic way to simulate real-life conversations in English. By acting out scenarios, you practice thinking quickly and contextually. How to do it? Solo role-play. Choose everyday situations like ordering food, asking for directions, or booking an appointment. Speak out loud, adopting different roles in the conversation. Partner exercises. Engage a friend or join online language communities where you can participate in role-play sessions. This interactive practice forces you to think on your feet in English. Record and reflect. Consider recording your role-play sessions to analyze your language use, pacing, and natural flow. This feedback loop can help you pinpoint areas for improvement. Why it works. Role-playing mimics real-life stress and spontaneity. It's a safe space to experiment with language, learn colloquial expressions, and reduce the fear of making mistakes. 4. Dedicated English-only zones and time blocks. What it means. Establish specific times or areas where you commit solely to using English. This method creates a mental boundary that encourages your brain to operate in English without interference from your native language. How to do it. Time blocks. Decide on a daily period, like 30 minutes or an hour, during which you only think, speak, or write in English. Use this time to tackle routine tasks, self-talk, or even to challenge yourself with creative writing. Physical zones. Set up a particular spot in your home, a desk or a reading nook, as your English zone. Place English books, magazines, and even sticky notes with English labels in that area. Digital immersion. Disable language options on your devices during these periods, forcing yourself to use English for online browsing, emails, or apps. Why it works. Creating clear boundaries helps your brain switch gears. Over time, these periods of immersion strengthen your ability to think in English naturally, even outside the designated zones. 5. Interactive technology and gamification. What it means. Leverage modern technology to add an interactive and fun element to your language learning. Gamified tools provide instant feedback and reward progress, keeping you motivated. How to do it. Language apps. Beyond basic vocabulary drills, apps like Anki for flashcards, Tandem or HelloTalk for conversational practice can simulate real-life interactions and scenarios. Online games. Engage in English-based games, be it word puzzles, trivia, or interactive story apps that challenge you to think and respond quickly in English. Voice-activated assistants. Use Siri, Alexa, or Google Assistant to practice your English. Ask them questions, have short conversations, or even set daily challenges where you interact only in English. Why it works. Interactive platforms transform language practice into an engaging activity. They also help you overcome the fear of failure by creating a playful, low-pressure environment to experiment with new vocabulary and sentence structures. 6. Deliberate practice through creative writing. What it means. Writing creatively in English pushes your brain to form new connections and express ideas without the fallback of your native language. How to do it. Short stories and poems. Set a goal to write a short story or poem each week in English. Let your imagination run wild without worrying too much about perfect grammar initially. Focus on expression. Writing prompts. Use online writing prompts or language learning forums that provide daily or weekly challenges. Peer feedback. Share your work with peers or join online writing communities to receive constructive feedback. Revising your work in English helps refine your internal thought process. Why it works. Creative writing forces you to think in abstract terms and experiment with language, fostering a deeper and more flexible command of English that goes beyond everyday conversation. 7. Mindfulness and reflection in English. What it means. Combine mindfulness techniques with your language practice to create a reflective space where you're fully present and using English to process your thoughts and emotions. How to do it. Meditative journaling. Instead of merely recounting your day, reflect on your emotions, challenges, and triumphs, all in English. This can be a guided meditation where you verbalize your inner state. Affirmations. Create a list of positive affirmations in English. Example, I am confident in my ability to communicate in English.